Good Friday evening, everyone in Roofmon Nation. Welcome to another episode of the People's Power Hour in Roofmon Nation. I hope you are watching on Black Power Media, the most dangerous platform on social media, because you're watching the most dangerous show on social media, Roofmon Nation on Black Power Media. Hey, y'all, it's Jackie Roofmon. Thank you so much for joining me this Friday. Trying to get all my ducks in a row here with everything going on, trying to find all of my little links to make sure I have everything that I need. And of course, the one thing that I was looking for that I really need to talk about, I can't quite find right off the break. So this is gonna take a little bit of a minute. But yo, I'm so glad you all have joined me. I keep saying that's a hard habit to break. Thanks so much for joining me this Friday. I see y'all in the chat. David Silberg, the Jamom 93, Toby, Goddess Cool, Yipper 99, Devin Dean, Leah Boggs, Franny French, Easy D. Let's go down. Ariana Gladney, Salafu, how are you doing, my friend? Salifu, it's good to see you. And everyone who is yet to join. Woo, Lord, it's been a week, man. And listen, a lot has happened, and I'm not even going to talk about the leaks and how the media is trying to frame or profile the young dude who leaked the documents as some type of crazy pants cuckoo, right wing, gun nut, wing nut. Look, that might be true. He might be those things, but the information in those documents still true. So I don't care what his reasons were. I don't care what his ideology was. The fact that the documents do say what they do, that's the only issue here. But of course, the media doesn't want to talk about that. Now the media wants to talk about how there's a problem with him, that he is the issue. Okay, so now my audio has a problem. So let me see. Because I swear, y'all are just. All right. I hope that's better. I hope that sounds better. Let me know if that sounds better, y'all. My mic is not actually a tin can with a string attached to it. Oh my God. Sometimes I just forget to check all the connections before I go live because I'm trying to get all of the information together that I have that I want to share with you. So there you go. Thanks for letting me know the audio was bad. Glad I fixed that. All right. So let's get down to business. I hope you've got your libations. I have mine. I'm doing white wine tonight. So I have been circumspect about this whole controversy over the Rage Against the War Machine rally for reasons that I, thought were very principled, and there was no reason to get all pissed off about, random people coming over to my Twitter feed and saying,
really crappy, hateful, sometimes racist, always classist, always right wing opportunist things after that whole blow up um, that Max Blumenthal initiated by deciding to make me the scapegoat for whatever the Rage Against the War Machine rally actually ended up being. And look, I'm not here to analyze what that rally was or was not. I just want to talk about how the universe has once again proven a sister right. Because, see, when you are firmly rooted in organizing for the people, and you are firmly rooted in principled struggle on behalf of the most marginalized people, all of the marginalized people, you understand that organizing with reactionaries is not only illogical, but it is against the interests of the people you are organizing with. I had we had this conversation. We had this conversation before March, before February, before the Rage Against the War Machine rally, where I tried so hard in some offline conversations, in some what do I email list served conversations with some organizations that I'm kind of tangentially involved in, not fully, but organizing with them. But I am involved with them. Has some really interesting shitty and racist comments with white anti-war activists who just swore up and down that I was sowing division, that I was wrong, that I was being racist toward this rally, that I was doing the work of the state, that I was playing ID politics, and this is the problem with them. I got all of this. I got all of that from individuals on email threads and Twitter, in my DMs on Facebook, in my inbox on Facebook, telling me that I was ridiculous. And it was all based on all of the hate, all of the heat was based on this article that I wrote back in February, on February 8th, that was published in Black Agenda Report. If you're not reading Black Agenda Report, you should be. Not just because not because I post, not because I publish articles in there, but because it's an amazingly important source for news, commentary, and analysis from the Black left. If Black Agenda Report didn't exist, I really think people would not believe that there are Black leftists who have a unique and valid analysis of capitalism, imperialism, and the connected militarism that affects all working class and poor people around the world, but particularly Black, Indigenous, and brown working class and poor people in the US and in the global South. The Black Agenda Report is one of the outlets where our commentary, where our voices can be heard. So I'm going to drop this article for you in the chat if you do not have it already, if you don't remember it. Oh, that's not what I meant to do. Sorry. Whoops. That's for later on. So, what I realized as people were emailing me and sending me messages and tweeting at me, especially after the rally, especially after Max Blumenthal decided to put my name in his mouth and quite literally make me the scapegoat for whatever happened with this rally, whether people took it seriously or not or whatever. Um people I realized that people didn't actually read the article. Everybody had the same complaints about the article. The fact that I was calling the speakers racist, which I actually never did. That I don't talk about the speakers in this article at all. I could have, because the speakers were terrible. Some of the speakers were terrible, horrible people. And folks were fine with being involved with an event with people with homophobic and transphobic ideology were speakers. I could have talked about the speakers, but I chose not to because I thought it was more important to talk about the political ideology of one of the major organizers of the event. And that was the Mises Caucus or Mises Caucus, or however the hell you pronounce that passel of bigots that has now taken over the Libertarian Party. They are who I talked about in this article. And in a connected way, I talked about some of the criticism that I was getting already just from having the conversations in the anti war spaces about this rally as people were finding out about it and they were sharing the information. Oh, this is great. You know, we can unite with these people. We can grow the anti war movement. Look at this. We have something in common with the right. And my response was like, are y'all out your minds? Because do you know who these people are? The Libertarian Party, just off the break, are capitalists. And last I checked, capitalists and capitalism are and is the enemy of imperialists, of anti-imperialists. I how did we become able to unify with people who advocate for the primacy of private property in their political party platform plank? That's a lot of peas. Ooh. But people were doing that. A lot of these white anti-war activists were doing that. Oh, it doesn't matter that how they feel about capitalism. We have to stop nuclear war, and we need to be aligned with everybody and anybody who stops nuclear war. And I was trying to tell these people that listen, I get that the threat of nuclear war is very serious. But number one, this is not the only time nuclear war in Ukraine has been like a serious threat. Like, I mean, really? This is the only time y'all have been concerned about the threat of nuclear war? That's very interesting. But more importantly, you might agree with these people today, or more accurately, they might agree with you on this one issue today. But what do they want to do with the people we organize with and the people for whom we organize the working class and poor masses? What do they want to do about those people and their rights? What do their policies say about those people every other day of the year? What do they say about all of the other things we organize around people centered human rights for all people? And when I try to bring up the problems with the Libertarian Party historically on these issues, I still got pushback from white anti-war activists. Then they start getting angry and telling me, that I'm sowing division, and I must not want nuclear war to be thwarted, and I guess I just want nuclear war to happen. I had people telling me that I'm just ridiculous for the things that I'm saying, and I'm like, I'm not going to keep arguing with these people. I'm going to do what I do best. And one of the things I do best is to write. The second thing is probably to talk. But so I talked to my boss, Ajamu Baraka, about it. I'm like, do you see what's happening with are you getting this vibe too from some of the people that we're organizing with? And his response was, well, sister, yes, I am. And I think you should write an article about it. So I did. I did the research about who was organizing this thing because, as I said then, before I put my name, my face, my presence onto anything, any event, any group, anything that anybody else is doing outside of the folks that I organize with, I need to know who is organizing the thing. So I did some research into who was behind this Rage Against the War Machine rally, and I found out that it is the Mises Caucus that at that point had their national convention, and the Mises Caucus had taken over the Libertarian Party officially. Like the Mises Caucus had won, Mises Caucus candidates had won controlling number of seats for the Libertarian Party, and they in effect controlled the Libertarian Party. They were the Libertarian Party. And the information that I referenced in this article to explain why these people are such a problem was actually provided by a publication called Reason Magazine. And if you're not familiar with Reason Magazine, they are a libertarian publication. They're not the official publication of the Libertarian Party, but they plainly state in their masthead and in their About section and on their website, libertarian views for libertarian solutions. They're libertarians. And the information they provided about the takeover of the Mises Caucus of the Libertarian Party was that old school libertarians said that these people were bigots. It was old school libertarians who said these folks were racists and transphobes and would cause problems for the party, that they would not expand the party. In the article, I shared links to tweets that high-ranking members of the Libertarian Party had already shared, that were already racist, or members of the Mises Caucus now taken over by the Libertarian Party. This is one of those tweets that exposed the racist ideology of the people in the Libertarian Party who had just taken it over. I put a link to this tweet in the article. It is absolutely in there. Let's see, where's the other one? There was another link to a tweet. Oh, here it is. I put the link to this other tweet by another high-ranking Libertarian Party member. Where are you? Come on. All right. Oh, there you go. The link to this tweet is also in the article where Jeremy Kauffman, high-ranking member of the Libertarian Party, Mises Caucus, now Libertarian Party, actually tweeted, if 1,000 trans people were murdered every year, but there were no taxes, we'd live in a substantially more moral world. For reference, about 40 transgender people are murdered in the US per year. I added that link to this tweet in the article. All of this, everything about the Mises Caucus and their racism and their transphobia and their homophobia, and the fact that the old guard libertarians have either left the Libertarian Party since the Mises Caucus takeover, or have not only left the party, but they've taken their money, like decades of long time financial support for the Libertarian Party, gone after the Mises Caucus takeover of the Libertarian Party. All of that in the article, all of the evidence that one of the people who organized this event have serious, serious political problems that we cannot afford to be aligned with in any way, because it puts our people directly in harm's way. That really is the bottom line. But people didn't pay any attention to any of that. You know what they got angry about, y'all? You know what people didn't like about my article? They didn't like the hashtag anti-war so white that I came up with. That's what pissed them off. So that is what people responded to. And that is, and I came up with that hashtag because the people who were so intent on telling those of us anti-imperialists who were African, who were brown, who were indigenous, who were anti-imperialist organizers of color, that these people are dangerous for us, most of them people were white. And they were telling us that we were weaponizing our identity to destroy the to destroy the recoalescing or the growth of a new anti-war. Like, the most affected people by US imperialism and militarism around the world are actively trying to stop an anti war movement from coalescing, that made no logical sense except for in the fevered minds of white people who really did not care that the people who helped organize this Rage Against the War Machine rally were racists and transphobes. And, when you invite two Nazis to sit down at the table, guess how many Nazis are sitting at the fucking table? It's three. So the people who I was trying in previous days before I wrote the article, so that would be in January, in mid to late January, when this event came across my radar. The people that I had tried to have a conversation with, a principled conversation with, refused to hear what I had to say, refused to hear what African anti imperialists, other African anti imperialists had to say, refused to hear what indigenous anti imperialists had to say. They just didn't want to hear what we had to say. They were mad that we were calling these white people racist. Never read the article, never read any of the absolute evidence and proof that I provided in the article to support my argument that these people are dangerous to us. They just got mad at anti-war so white and came after me. So when the rally happened, and whatever happened at the rally happened, I guess they were not happy with whatever happened at the rally happening or not happening. So Max Blumenthal decided to go on Jimmy Dore's show on a day when I guess Dore wasn't hosting and Aaron Mate was sitting in for Jimmy Dore. And and Max Blumenthal decides, as I said, to make me the scapegoat for whatever they were unhappy about with their rally. Because I really don't see any other reason for that man to have mentioned my name whatsoever as like the sole focus or the sole reason for people not supporting this rally, which was his argument basically, that all of the criticism of the rally, that the speakers were racist and the attendees were racist. And then you had, somebody named Jackie Luckman writing an article saying that the speakers are racist. I never said that in the article. And then he goes on to say that I went on to his good friend Jared Ball's show on Black Power Media. And Jared Ball asks me, well, who among the speakers are racist? And Max says to Aaron and whoever else is the female co-host who's in the background and the other dude who's on the show, I have no idea because I don't watch Jimmy Dore because he's not important to me. I got important shit to do, like organizing. But he's telling them, oh, and then when Jared asks her who the speakers are who are racist, name them, then she spends 5 minutes not naming who she was calling racist. And that was a big old joke. They thought that was funny. And he puts up this 30-second clip of a part of a comment that I made that was completely out of context of the actual conversation that we had. Because Jared never said those words to me in that show. He never asked me who among the speakers were racist because I never talked about the speakers in my article. And I never talked about the speakers in public when referencing the heat I was getting for that article. I didn't talk about the speakers at all. What that conversation was about on the Remix Morning Show that day was all of the people who were responding to the article and coming into my Twitter feed, just random Twitter people doing like what random Twitter people do, coming onto my Twitter feed with their nastiness, with their hate, with their misogyny, with their racism, not reading the article, but having ever so much to say about how much of a bigot and how much of an ID warrior for ID Paul and divisive and all this kind of bullshit that I was. That's what that conversation was about. And when Jared said, well, name who these people are, I said, and I'm sure some of you will remember, I said that, look, all these people are just random people on Twitter. So there's really no need for me to just sit there and obsess about these anonymous random folks on Twitter who do what anonymous random folks on Twitter do. I'm not, there may be a time when people need to be named, but this is not that time. That's how that conversation went. But that's not what Max told his followers, the followers of Jimmy Dore. And for a while, I really wondered. And after Max did that little appearance on Jimmy Dore's show after the rally was over, then the heat that people directed at me like tripled, like every day for like 2 weeks. I 20 plus Twitter notifications, people all in up and down my Twitter feed calling me all kinds of names. I had an exchange with Blumenthal where he says to me on Twitter, when I realized that he tweeted about me also. And I'm just like, this man has never talked to me really, although we've been in the same organizing circles. He knows who I am. We know the same people. We've been at many of the same events many times. And there's another aspect of this that I'm going to save for later that I have kept quiet, but see, because now is the time for naming people, we're going to air it all out. So I was really like, what is his beef with me? Why would he say this? Why would he lie about the article? Why would he lie about me? This is just that was just so shitty. And when he did it, I don't think I realized that he tweeted about me. So somebody like sends me the tweet and I was like, "Oh, word." So I respond to his tweet, Max, are you kidding me? You know me. How are you going to act like you can't pronounce my name? Dude, you know me. You and your wife know me. What is going on? So he continues this charade on Twitter until Lajamu Baraka responds to his bullshit and says, because at some point, Max says, well, now that I've put you on blast, put me on blast for what? Telling the truth about the bigots that y'all wanted to be aligned with? Well, put me on blast. How? By lying about what I said? I it just, so having not been able to really figure out the logic behind him putting my name in his mouth and just, unleashing that Twitter storm against me, like literally placing me in the middle of that, whatever the fallout of that rally was, and making me the target of people's anger, frustration, whatever it was that he wanted to. I realized that it was an intentional tactic. He did that intentionally. He knew what he was doing. He knew that folks were going to do exactly what they did. They were going to come and attack me and on and on. And I don't know if he thought I was just going to cower away. And I'm not sure what he thought. I don't know what he thought my response was going to be. But let me tell you something. Thank God I'm in an organization with principled people. Because when Ajamu Baraka responded, and he said some foolish thing, and Ajamu's response was, Max, I think you want to walk this back, my friend. You don't want to go down this path, because let me explain to you how the entire Black Alliance for Peace and Pan-African Community Action was on standby. You hear me? They were waiting to unleash on this man and these people. But we're principled, and we recognize, and Ajambu helped me understand, this is an intentional, coordinated attack that he has created to make you the scapegoat for the failure of whatever this rally was. It wasn't as successful as they wanted it to be, maybe, and they decided to make you the scapegoat. Why you entered into the calculus, who knows? But that's really what this is. And also, this was an attention-getting thing for Blumenthal and Dore and the rest of them. This got them clicks. They were able to point to this Black woman who had this anti-Warsaw White hashtag. This is another arsenal in their anti-ID Paul, anti-woke, right-wing opportunism warfare. That's all this is. I was the new face of their campaign against wokeism and ID Paul. So that went on for like, the rally was February 19th. That went on for, people all on my Twitter feed, and, sending me emails. People found my email address, sending me emails. Woo, that went on for maybe a month, and then eventually it died down. And then, as I usually do, I get really pissed off about something, and I'm pissed off for a good 2-3 weeks, and then the universe is like, you got something else that you have to focus on, so don't worry about that anymore. So I honestly didn't think about it anymore. I didn't think about it no more. I really didn't, because I said what I had to say. I wrote what I wrote. I stand by what I wrote. I said what I said. So I didn't think there was anything else that I needed to say. There were people who I have cut off communications with because of the disrespect they showed me in conversations that we were having on this issue. And you call me petty if you want to, but we can disagree, and that's fine. People, I'm cool with people disagreeing with me and telling me that I'm incorrect on analysis, or, facts are cool, because I don't know everything. I'm welcoming to correction. I try to be. I know sometimes I can be a little prickly, but I don't know everything. So I'm open to learning more and to being corrected. But I don't tolerate disrespect from nobody, ever. You can be mad at me and disagree with me, but you need to watch how you speak to me. Because I ain't your mammy. I ain't your child. You ain't my daddy. And there is no one walking on the face of this earth with two legs that has so much authority that I am going to cower to them when they talk to me any kind of way, insult my intelligence, and say all kinds of wild shit out the side of their mouth, and think that I'm not going to look at that and go, oh, you actually think I think you have authority to speak to me that way? Not this one. Mm-mm. The Holy Spirit and the Orishas told me, and the ancestors told me, y'all ain't the boss of me. You don't have the right to talk to me that way. So yeah, I absolutely did. Burn some bridges, set them on fire, blew up the remnants between me and some people. And I'm not going to rebuild them, because the universe has proven me right. So imagine my surprise. Not really. I really wasn't surprised. Okay, let me stop lying. I wasn't surprised. When Twitter friend Free Mamiya, Stop Cop City, R. Johnson, 815, who I got a chance, I did get a chance to hug her neck on March 18th. Imagine my surprise, not surprise at all, when she tweeted this, and this was from April 13th. This is a tweet from the Libertarian Party National. Their tweet says, critical race theory is the most widespread and culturally accepted form of racism in the world today. To dispose of it, government schools must be abolished. So she retweeted this from the Libertarian Party on April 13th. And they said reactionary white people, looking to redefine racism so they can continue to oppress Black folks. Y'all remember Rage Against the War Machine, people telling me to organize with these racists, right? This shit right here is exactly why I said no. And that is precisely why I said everything I said. And here it is, the universe and the racists proving us right. And just in case you didn't believe, just in case you think that we made that up, that is, that was created. This is the Libertarian Party's actual Twitter page, their actual Twitter feed. And yeah, they have some nice stuff in here from February 6th. Oh, disband NATO, withdraw financial aid and military to Ukraine, and all this kind of stuff. They talk about the leaked docs and Oh, we don't discriminate when it comes to leaks of government secrets. All leaks are good leaks, and all transparency is good transparency. That's great. They talk about the Restrict Act. That's great. And then, bam, there it is. So, despite the fact that I wrote a whole article with primary sourced links and evidence of the racism and the bigotry of these people who have taken over the Libertarian Party that people decided to ignore because they didn't like the hashtag and they didn't like this blackface, calling these white people the bigots that even their white counterparts in the Libertarian Party called them, even though people spent all the time in the world that they did calling me all kinds of names, everything but the name my mama gave me, the name I adopted from my late husband. People called me an agent. People said I was doing the work of the state. Here's y'all's Kang. These people want to abolish public school education because they believe, just like the GOP is pushing this idea that critical race theory is being taught in K through 12 schools, and not one of these ignorant racist motherfuckers can define what CRT is. Because as people have continually pointed out, it's not taught in K through 12 schools. It is literally the way laws are examined in law school, in college, in law school, from the perspective that racism is systemic and the way laws are implemented in this country are affected by racist ideology. That is what critical race theory is. It is not taught in K through 12 schools. But these people, y'all's Libertarian Party kings and queens, these are the people that you all wanted to grow an anti-war movement with. As if, as I said, as if every other day, and I do mean every single other day, that they're not talking about disbanding NATO and ending the war in Ukraine, as if every other day they're not talking about taking away our rights. They are. They always have been. But here's the thing. They've never been shy about who they are. They've never hidden their ideology. Their platform has always been public. The Mises or Mises caucus have always been clear about who they want to continue to oppress. They they one of their members had a tweet saying that the Civil Rights Act needed to be repealed, the whole Civil Rights Act. These are people who are fine with racial discrimination in public places. Talked about all that in the article. None of that mattered. I'm the agent. I'm the one who's too invested in ID Paul. So every other day that y'all ain't organizing with them to stop nuclear war, which they're not doing. Every other day they're organizing to take away our rights, and that was okay with some of y'all. That was cool with y'all. And what was really amazing is that people who were cool with dealing with these folks were fine that they had homophobic, transphobic, and racist ideology. Like, that was acceptable to people. And I got to tell you, y'all, my list of questionable people in the movement, my list of folks who are doing this online, whatever it is, analysis and commentary from a so-called left perspective, my list of people to be suspicious of has grown exponentially because so many folks were okay with dealing with people who wanted to treat marginalized folks, Black folks, queer folks, trans folks, the way these people openly said they wanted to treat those people. Like y'all were able to put aside the hatred that these folks have shown for us. Just put that aside and roll with them as if what they are planning to do to us if they ever get power isn't important. Because that's what y'all said. That's basically what you said by rolling with these folks, that we know that these people are transphobes. We know that they want to exterminate transgender people. We know that they want to end what little tiny bit of civil rights legislation exists. We know that they are racists. We know that they are capitalists. We know all of that. We know that they're fine with racial discrimination and bigotry. We don't care. We don't care. We don't care what they do any other day as long as they repeat these things that we believe in. We can work with them. And history has shown over and over again that when left forces align with right-wing forces out of this ridiculous attempt to forge a left-right alliance, because this isn't the first time in history that this has happened, that people on the left thought that they could grow their movement for whatever they thought they could grow movement with the right. This is not the first time this has happened. But every single time, you know what's happened? The right grew, not the left. The left never grows. The right wing never abandons its right wing ideology to align with and organize with the left or grow the left. It doesn't happen. History has shown over and over again that the right grows. So these people, y'all were cool with putting our humanity, like literally putting our humanity aside. And it is, oh my God, it is so glaringly obvious and telling to me how comfortable people were with these people shitting on trans people, and how you were fine with how these folks were talking about exterminating trans people and denying human rights for trans people, all because of your own bigoted ideology toward trans people. I saw that. I saw that. And y'all, you can go ahead. You made your bed with these people. Lie the fuck in it. We do not organize with reactionaries. We do not subject the people we organize with and for to the dangerous, violent, hateful policies that reactionaries always have toward marginalized people. Because you know what? If they're not coming after you today, guess who they will be coming after tomorrow? We know this from history. Thank you, Lenore. Lene, appreciate you. Appreciate you. We know this from history. This is why our organization, this is why our work is rooted in the Black radical anti-imperialist tradition. We understand that the most marginalized people, the people most affected by white supremacy, settler colonialism, patriarchy, capitalism, imperialism, xenophobia, militarism, are working class and poor, oppressed people, African descended people, all the people in the global South, indigenous people. So, how do we put our people in a position to be in coalition with people who want to kill them? How do we do that? And how do we think that's going to grow the left? How in the world do you not see that those people will turn on us at a moment's notice? universe has proven me right. And at this point, a whole lot of people owe me an apology, but I'm not holding my breath for an apology, because even if they apologized, I wouldn't accept them because the damage really has been done. I don't want these people's apologies, particularly since I have kept this, and I actually didn't look in the bag where I put all of the cards that were on the wreaths that people sent to Abdus's funeral. And I literally like had the wreaths brought back to the house. Um, my family helped me go through them. Take the cards off the wreaths. I put them in a bag, and I never looked at them again because I couldn't. Because I couldn't. So I literally had not looked at that in that bag since the day of Abdus's funeral in June 2021. Until a good friend reminded me that a certain person who had my name in his mouth for his own right-wing opportunistic reasons actually sent a wreath to Abdus's funeral. Mm-hmm. So here this man was, not only did he know who I was, he knew Abdus because like I said, we've been in the same places, same organizing places, same events. Here this man is, he and his wife sent flowers to my husband's funeral with a lovely note. Deepest condolences and recognition of all the important work of Abdus. We also send our love, Max and Anya. And then, what, 2 years later, less than 2 years later, he is holding me up as the scapegoat for their right wing opportunistic rally with the Libertarian Party. And that other people party that Nick Brana has. I didn't even talk about him. I didn't even talk about Nick Brana, and I could have. Oh, I could have. But I tried to be principled and talk and keep the keep the focus on the primary contradiction. And this is what I got. People like this then opportunistically throwing me to their racist wolves. So, yeah. So this is the environment that we operate in. We meaning African organizers. It's hard to know who to trust. It's hard for us to know who's going to turn on us and who's going to turn liberal or who's going to turn right wing when the money is good enough for them, when the exposure is good enough for them. We don't know. So this is why we are very careful about who we let into our organizing spaces. This is why we are very careful about who we share information with. This is why we're real careful about who we spend time around. And because you never know. You never know. So thank you, universe. Thank you, spirit. Thank you, Orishas. Thank you, ancestors, for proving me, for proving us right. The Libertarian Party has shown you exactly who they have always been. And if you want to continue on that left-right alliance bullshit with those people, go right ahead. You have made your bed. Please lie in it and stay away from me. So that's that. Too Black, why are you late? You're late, sir. All right. I feel so much better after I got that off my, because I've been holding on to this thing. I've been holding on to this. Whew, Lord. Anyway, let's talk about Venezuela because today is the 21st anniversary of the reversal of the US backed coup in Venezuela that was supposed to depose, oh, excuse me, um, Hugo Chavez. It did not. And it didn't because of this amazing thing called people power, like literally the power of the people in the streets in Venezuela. And I'm going to try to share my little slides with you. Oh, this cannot be done in that manner. That's too much. Let's see if I can do it over here. That makes it a little better. Mm-mm. Let's see now. So I went to Venezuela last in 2021, and it was really a fantastic, um, really a wonderful trip. It was like right after, or not long after Abdus's death, after his funeral and everything. So it was really strange because I tried very hard to um to keep things kind of focused on why I was there, but it was really hard to do that because I was, I was grieving my husband. But it was a really great event. I went for the International Anti-Fascist Conference that was hosted in Venezuela, and this is really kind of a pain in the behind trying to get these um, to display correctly. So I'm just going to do it in the most bootleg fashion that I possibly can. So okay, this is the um, 4F Quartel, or the fort in Venezuela. That is where the museum, the historical museum, or the Museum of the Military History of Caracas, is housed. And this is called the Cuartel de la Montaña 4F. And this is also where, this is a more um, wider shot, and there is an eternal flame in front of this fort. And this is one of two eternal flames that represent the revolution, the Bolivarian Revolution. Um, the other one you'll see at the end. Inside the fort is the tomb of Hugo Chavez and Simon Bolivar. Bolivar is the original revolutionary of the Bolivarian Revolution. Hugo Chavez revived the Bolivarian Revolution, and he is interred in the same sepulcher underneath this area here, as Simon Bolivar, if I'm remembering correctly. This is a really incredible, and I didn't even think I would be so emotional, but I really was, and so were so many people. Um, but you can go up to the tomb, and this is literally the sepulcher where Hugo Chavez, his body is laying in state. You can go up this little ramp, and pay your condolences in your honor. The guards stand here, and you go down this side of the little ramp. Very emotional, very, very powerful. I didn't even think I would be as emotional as I was, but I was. And so were several other people. Um, this is one of the plaques going into the tomb area as you go into the fort. And it reads, I'm going to have to slide this up a little bit so I can read it. Today we have a homeland, and no matter what happens in any circumstance, we will continue having homeland unity, unity and more unity. There will be no shortage of those who try to take advantage of conjunctures difficult to maintain this commitment to the restoration of capitalism, of neoliberalism, to try to end the fatherland in the face of these new difficulties, whatever size they are. The answer of all and any of all patriots is unity, struggle, battle, and victory. Those are the words of Hugo Chavez Frias, spoken on the 8th of December, 2012. Uh, there is another plaque on the other side. They're like on opposite sides on each side of the door, going the entrance going into the fort. Um, let's see. Whoops. Nope, that's the wrong one. Sorry. He continues saying, this Bolivarian message is addressed to the brave soldiers who are in the regiment of Paracaidistas of Aragua and in the Armored Brigade of Valencia. Colleagues, unfortunately for now, the goals we set for ourselves were not achieved in the capital city. He's talking now about the armed revolution that he led in 1989 to depose the capitalist neoliberal government at the time that did not succeed. So he was speaking about that when he said, unfortunately for now, the goals we set for ourselves were not achieved in the capital city. That is, we here in Caracas, we failed to control the power. I heard this solidarity message. I thank you for your loyalty. I thank you for your courage, your selflessness, and I, before the country and before you, I assume the responsibility of this Bolivarian military movement. And these were Chavez's words on the 4th of February in 1992, after he basically turned himself over to the government forces that crushed the armed rebellion that he led, and he was imprisoned. So, a very interesting thing about the fort is that it does contain a museum dedicated to Hugo Chavez, his leadership, and most importantly, to the overturning of the 2002 coup that the US backed to depose Hugo Chavez. But aside from the tomb being the first thing you see when you enter into the fort, when you go through the doors, the first thing you see is the tomb. On the right, the first thing you are taken to as a part of the tour of the entire complex is the chapel where Hugo Chavez prayed and meditated every day before engaging in military battle against the former neo-colonial state of Venezuela. So this is our guide telling us about the chapel, telling us about how Hugo Chavez would come in the chapel every day. Yes, that is Eugene Perrier. Comrade Eugene was with us on this tour, on this trip. And it was a week-long trip that we stayed in Venezuela and attended all of these different fantastic conferences, and it was really great. But this was the first part of the tour where we are told that Hugo Chavez came into this chapel, and everything, all of the icons, the cross on the wall, the candles, the implements, they are all original to the chapel from when Hugo Chavez would come there as a leader of the armed rebellion at that fort every day. So all of the religious icons and implements are behind glass, preserved for posterity. This is the Bible that Hugo Chavez read read out of, prayed out of, meditated every day before he went out to engage in military struggle against the neoliberal state in Caracas. I I think if this was important enough for the people in Venezuela who are the curators and who are responsible for maintaining the legacy and the history of their revolution and of their hero, Hugo Chavez, if it was important enough for them to include it as the first thing we do on the tour, the first thing we see on the tour of the fort, I thought it was important enough to share it with you. And this was one of the things that I learned in Venezuela, aside from going to the main downtown area of Caracas and seeing very prominently in the city square a whole Muslim mosque, a whole Christian church on the other side, another, I think it was a Jewish synagogue in another place. And then at some point during the day, we were just kind of hanging out in the square, digging the vibe and the people. There was this procession of Catholics with a Catholic priest in front with the incense and the stuff and the chants and the stuff. And the people behind them, behind the Catholic priests, were carrying effigies of, it wasn't a Madonna, it was an African Orisha. And they were chanting her name, blessings to, I can't remember her name, but I remember calling, when I was able to get Wi-Fi, my pastor, Reverend Hagler, saying, what is this? What does this mean? And he's like, oh, that's the African Orisha that is probably worshipped by the people who worship Candomblé in Latin American countries, and they mix African spirituality with Christianity, with Catholicism, and that's kind of normal. Actually, you see it all the time. You see it in El Salvador, you see it in Nicaragua, you see it in in Cuba. And my pastor Reverend Hagler has gone all over the place, so he's seen the things. So he's telling me that this is normal. And I'm just like, so I'm looking at this and I'm like, wait, so these people who are deeply religious, of a deep religious faith, and I'm sure are contending with the contradictions of their faith, are also the same people who engaged in a military struggle against a neoliberal government that was oppressing the people in their country and overturned a coup. Huh. I guess religion does have a place in revolution for some people. I guess it kind of does. Okay, so all right, I'm gonna move on from that. So this is great. This is just a part of the display. This is Hugo Chavez's uniform. These are his patches, medals, and his weapons displayed. This is him commenting on the 2002 coup, where he said that on February 4th, it was really an action chaotic. It was an effort that wasn't gonna succeed. Made by young soldiers, or rather, it was not an effort that wasn't going to succeed. It was a monumental battle. The battle was bigger than the people who fought it. Made by young soldiers and citizens who also became soldiers that day without being or without having been soldiers. They became soldiers without having the experience of becoming soldiers in defending their country against the coup. And this was Hugo Chavez's comments on February 4th, 2009. And these are all of the, well, not all, but many of the news clippings chronicling the coup and the overturning of the coup. So let's get to some of that. This is the jail cell, the prison cell where Hugo Chavez was imprisoned after the failed military coup that he led in 1989. And here he says, and this is a comment he made from 1992, where he says, he called this the penitentiary of dignity. He said, anyway, whatever the weather, let's go here. And whatever the way under these Whatever the way under which we go out from these bars, we will go, dear compatriots, to the physical reunion with you to continue the march. He was being released from prison after having given himself up for leading the failed coup against the government, military coup. And he's talking to the Venezuelan people who at this point had already made him a hero because he tried to overturn the government that was profiting, that was allowing the rich to profit in Venezuela off of the oil wealth of Venezuela and not sharing those riches with the poor. So the poor were being kept poor as Venezuelan society was able to, or Venezuelan upper class society was able to profit off of Venezuelan oil riches. So he was saying to the people, we will go, dear patriots, to the physical reunion with you to continue the march, to continue the revolution. As I was saying, the village singer Venezuelan, the Venezuelan village singer Ali Primera, gathering flowers, touching doors, gathering suns until we get there. He's quoting this Venezuelan singer who says that in this song, that on the way to revolution, on the way to liberation, the people will gather flowers, will touch doors, will gather suns until the people get to freedom, until the people get to liberation. And Hugo Chavez, upon being released from prison for leading a military coup that failed, was telling the people who saw him now as a hero, we will continue that march now that I'm out of prison. And this is just a close up of his prison cell, what it looked like on a typical day. So let's talk about the April Revolution. This is a main part of the museum, and I'm telling you this. I've let the people of Venezuela and Venezuelan analysis know that I'd be sharing some of this content because I really hope that you get a chance to go to Venezuela. It's not, I understand that we living in this capitalist system are hampered by capitalism, are hampered by lack of funds, are hampered by all kinds of things that keep us from traveling to other countries to see what's really going on in the world. But if you do get a chance to go to Venezuela, I would suggest that you jump at that chance. Venezuela, Cuba, Zimbabwe, Ghana, those are Zimbabwe, Ghana, several African countries, Nicaragua, all next on my list. So the April Revolution. In 2002, this is the translation for this, the beginning of this part of the museum. In 2002, the leaders of the Venezuelan oligarchy, placed in the service of the United States, carried out a national destabilization plan with the intention to mobilize the supporters of the current president to Miraflores, which is the presidential palace in Venezuela, and provoke an act of violence that would justify a military action against President Chavez. This is how the first 21st century Venezuelan coup d'etat that in less than 48 hours was reversed thanks to the loyalty of the popular power of the people, that means, and effected of the armed forces. The Comandante Eterno Hugo Chavez Foundation, or the Foundation of the Eternal Commander Hugo Chavez, presents in this museum exhibition, April Revolution, a tour of the historical context and events of this crucial political moment, bringing us closer to a human perspective through the testimonies of their protagonists, demonstrate with the different expressions of the popular soul the revolutionary tenacity to establish communications in the face of a bitter siege, a bitter siege of media and distorted information. The exhibition has a projection room where you'll be able to enjoy documentaries about the coup of the state and addresses of Commander Chavez talking about the topic. There's also on display an unpublished manuscript of Comandante Chavez during his confinement in the Orchila, where he was kidnapped and held prisoner. And I do have a picture of that unpublished manuscript. Welcome and welcome to this space of encounter and reflection, where it is fundamental sharing experiences for construction collective, of this page of our history. So I don't include everything because there is so much, there's so very much. But this references testimony that was given by none other than Colin Powell. And unfortunately, I snapped this picture right when the little thing came up over his face. But that is a picture of Colin Powell as he is testifying, and the caption is over his face. So sorry about that. And I thought I'd snapped the picture when that little overlay was gone, but I did not. So this is the actual newsreel of Colin Powell's testimony before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee when he criticized Hugo Chavez for expressing concerns about his views on democracy and the war on terrorism. What did Hugo Chavez say that got Powell so mad? Well, let me scroll down. Let me find it. Chavez, not only when he was elected by popular vote, because as I said, when he was released from prison, he ran for office because the people wanted him to. So he ran for office. It was the first time in Venezuelan history that the two parties that were prominent in Venezuelan political society united to back the one candidate against Hugo Chavez, who had popular support of the people. That didn't work, the uniting of the two, establishment parties. Hugo Chavez won 56% of the popular vote compared with 40% uh, of the vote for Salas Romer, who was a Yale-educated businessman, Enrique Salas Romer, who was backed by these two parties. So, what did Chavez do that pissed the United States off so much? Well, he set about. Let me go up here. He set about overturning or reversing the neoliberal policies of the previous government. He started to redistribute the country's land, to redistribute the oil wealth from the country, from the elite minority to the poor majority. That wealth, which I said before, never reached the campesino classes, the poor and indigenous and peasant classes. He began to dismantle the old governing class from power. This is what he called the Bolivarian Revolution, that was inspired by South American independence hero Simon Bolivar, who he shares sepulcher with. I can never figure out how to pronounce that word, but anyway, you know what I mean. Tomb. So that pissed Washington off, of course. Here this leftist is coming in, redistributing land and redistributing the oil wealth and kicking all of the elite out of Venezuela's political power. This is what Chavez did. But the straw that really broke the camel's back was when in 2001, Hugo Chavez publicly criticized the United States bombing civilians in Afghanistan, openly opposing the U.S. us with us or against us logic that was coming from the Bush administration. So Chavez openly criticizing U.S. policy in Afghanistan, calling the war on terror a farce and a war on the Afghanistan people who were poor. That, of course, got the attention of the CIA, which got the attention of Colin Powell, who testified in front of Congress that Hugo Chavez's concerns about his views on the war on terrorism were of a concern to then Secretary of State Colin Powell, who said, "We have been concerned with some of the actions of Venezuelan President Chavez and his understanding of what a democratic system is all about. Hugo Chavez was democratically elected by a majority of the people in Venezuela. That's a democratic system. The mandate that he was carrying out was the will of the people who elected him. That's a democratic system. The criticism Chavez levied against the United States was absolutely accurate because Venezuela had just gotten rid of the neoliberal regime and policies that they had lived over, that they had lived under, that were supported by Washington. So that's what this clip is. This is, and they actually have the newsreel of the testimony that Powell gave that day to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. So the caption here is "Homeland and Sovereignty versus Empire and Expansion," and this is a picture of a newspaper, a Venezuelan news clipping of a picture of Hugo Chavez with General Muammar Gaddafi in talks about negotiating trade for oil between the two countries. This was also a great threat to the United States. The relationship that Hugo Chavez was forging with Libya, they couldn't let that happen, right? So these are some of the pictures of the people who poured into the streets when they heard on popular media that President Hugo Chavez was that he was no longer in power. So the timeline kind of goes on April 10th. An army general went on television in Venezuela with what was probably definitely a CIA script demanding that Chavez give up power. Otherwise, he would be deposed. So that was like the signal to the right wing forces in Venezuela that the US backed coup was about to happen, that this was it. So that was on April 10th when the news started broadcasting this high ranking army general saying, you know, that Chavez needs to give up power because, you know, he's a dictator, and on it, it's just State Department talking points being read by a Venezuelan army general on Venezuelan television. The next day, April 11, thousands of opposition demonstrators went to march toward PDVSA, the Venezuelan oil company. Then meanwhile, and these are the people who are supporting the right wing, who want to get rid of Chavez. They've taken their marching orders from this army general, right? Meanwhile, Chavistas, counter demonstrators, supporters of Hugo Chavez, went to Miraflores, the presidential palace, to show support of the Chavez government. Then suddenly, opposition leaders changed the route of the march from PDVSA to Miraflores, and they're going toward the presidential palace where the Chavez supporters are. The army, which was still loyal to Chavez, most of them, particularly the rank and file, army members, were trying to keep the two crowds apart when suddenly snipers opened fire, shooting several of the demonstrators. Then the right wing tried to go on the media and claim that it was the Chavistas who had killed a bunch of opposition protesters. But the news footage that just happened to be captured by an Irish film crew that was in Venezuela to just film a documentary captured the actual footage showing the shots coming from above where the people were. The right wing on the news tried to claim that the Chavistas ambushed the right wing protesters from below, from the bridge below, but there was actually no one on that bridge that was under where those people were. The shots came from above where the Chavistas were, and the snipers were the right wing operatives. So, military officials hopped on television using that attempted assassination, attempted massacre story as a pretext for arresting Chavez. He was kidnapped, he was taken away in custody, and the narrative is that he would have been assassinated, as so many other leftist leaders who have been couped by US backed forces have been. It's worth noting that the army at this time was split, with the officers with a lot of the officers backing the right wing, and most of the rank and file backing the Chavistas and Hugo Chavez. So then, in the early morning of the next day, um, to avoid any further bloodshed, under the threat of both being cooed and kidnapped, and under the threat of further bloodshed by the right wing, Chavez actually agreed to go peacefully, um, as he was arrested at Miraflores, taken hostage by the coup makers, who took him to this remote island, and imprisoned him. They tried to make him sign a resignation document, but he refused, and that is very important. So Chavez is kidnapped. He is detained. The right wing, the representatives of the oligarchy go on television. They quickly set up this puppet government in Venezuela, draw up these bullshit constitutions, and they abolished the National Assembly and the Supreme Court. They, like I said, they cooked up this new constitution, the constitution that the people established when Hugo Chavez was elected. That was abolished. So the oligarchy, the representatives of the oligarchy go on television in Venezuela, and they announce all of this, that there's a new constitution, a one that the people didn't contribute to. There's no National Assembly, there's no Supreme Court, and they told people that Hugo Chavez had resigned. He had relinquished his presidency. But something happened that they were not expecting. And it's this. It's the response of the people in the poor neighborhoods, in the shanty towns, in the back streets, in the communes where the people who supported Hugo Chavez lived. As they began hearing the news that Chavez was not only no longer president, but that he had relinquished the presidency, they took to the streets and went toward the palace, demanding the return of Hugo Chavez. They knew something was not right. The rank and file officers of the president's honor guard was still loyal to Chavez. They moved to retake control of the palace that was taken control by the oligarchy and their military, their folks who were faithful in the military. The person they set up as the leader of this oligarchical government, he fled, but then he was arrested later. And then in the early morning hours of Sunday, 48 hours after the coup, the people in Venezuela forced the US backed forces to return Hugo Chavez to the presidential palace and the people. The people caused the coup to collapse within 48 hours because of their love for Hugo Chavez and the popular support among the people, among the ranks of the military, I think most importantly, and in the working class and poor populations of the people. So that is what you're seeing here. This is the first day when people are hearing that Hugo Chavez is not president anymore, and they've taken to the streets like, what? The crowds grow. This is outside of Miraflores, the presidential palace. This is the gate of Miraflores, and we went to Miraflores, and sat in an address that President Nicolas Maduro made, commemorating the overturning of the coup. So this is that first day. These are pictures from that first day when people are hearing on the news that Hugo Chavez is not president anymore, and they're going to Miraflores like, no, something's wrong. That something is really wrong, and they're on top of the palace. This is a member of the military who is holding up a picture of Hugo Chavez, signaling to the crowd below that they are on the side of the president and of the people. This is sorry for the glare. All of these pictures are behind glass. This is later on that night when people are showing up at Miraflores with a copy of the Constitution that the people of Venezuela crafted when Hugo Chavez was elected. When they elected Hugo Chavez, one of the first things he did was to get the people together to craft a constitution, to draft a constitution that the people wrote. That's this document that this woman is holding, the Bolivarian Constitution that the people wrote. They were outside of Miraflores demanding that their constitution be honored. This is the previously unpublished letter that Hugo Chavez himself wrote while he was imprisoned in I forgot the name of the place where they imprisoned him. But the story goes that the guard who was guarding him was a young was a young soldier who had supported Chavez, and he asked Chavez as he was imprisoned, basically waiting to be executed. Comandante Presidente, did you really give up the presidency? And the story goes that Commander Chavez told this young soldier, I would never give up the presidency. I did not give up the presidency. I only went willingly because I did not want more Venezuelan people. I did not want more of the poor people who have suffered so much to be killed. So the story goes that this soldier told President Chavez that the people need to know this. They need to know that you didn't give up the presidency. So write a letter to the people telling them that you have not given up the presidency, and throw it away, and throw it away into this trash can, because they never look at the trash. They'll never look in the trash. And I'll make sure your letter gets out and the people see it. So the story goes that's exactly what Hugo Chavez did. He wrote his letter saying to the people of Venezuela that I, Hugo Chavez, am still the president of Venezuela. I have not renounced the presidency. The Venezuelan people forever. And there's his signature there. He puts the letter in the trash can. The soldier does what he said he was going to do. He takes the letter and he gives it to the former attorney general under Hugo Chavez's administration, who goes on television, and he is expected to say that Hugo Chavez has relinquished his presidency, but he does not say that. He goes on television the next day and says, surprising the networks that are all controlled by the oligarchy, by the way, surprising the networks, instead of saying Hugo Chavez has relinquished the presidency, he says Presidente Chavez has not relinquished the presidency. He is still the president, and the feed is cut all of a sudden. And this was the next morning after Chavez mysteriously disappears. The next morning on the news stories, this was supposed to be the announcement that Chavez has given up the presidency and he's gone and he's not president anymore. His former attorney general, instead of saying that, said, no, Hugo Chavez is still the president. The feed is cut. There is no more regular programming on Venezuelan television for the entire day. All of the networks that are controlled by the Venezuelan oligarchy that set this coup up with the blessing and the help of the United States government showed cartoons all day that day. But it was enough. It was enough for the people to find out that Hugo Chavez had been kidnapped, that he was still their president. So they stayed at Miraflores. Even more people came to Miraflores demanding the return of Hugo Chavez. They were outside of the presidential palace with signs, "Donde está Hugo Chavez?" Where is Hugo Chavez? And the people forced the coup to collapse in 48 hours. And this is the triumphal return of Hugo Chavez back to the people who demanded his return. And when I tell you everything that they have in this display for this event is chilling, it is spine tingling, it is inspirational. Woo, it is all that stuff. It is all that kind of stuff. And I got to tell you, for me, it doesn't lionize Hugo Chavez as this otherworldly. No, what it does is it shows the power of the people. This is why I get so frustrated when folks have these weird ideas about what revolution is. Revolution is not this sexy thing that happens overnight. No, revolution is quite literally people, poor people, working class and poor people who realize they're being lied to by all of the official sources, all of the officials, setting up for themselves institutions that meet their needs, because that's what happened with this people's revolution. Because the media was lying to the people, and then the media went dark, showed cartoons all day, the people had to set up their own communication networks to convey this information that they saw. People didn't know what had happened. They had only been told what the lies were on the media, but they were getting different information. Excuse me, from members of the military at Miraflores who were still loyal to Hugo Chavez, who were telling them, no, the oligarchs have taken over the presidential palace. And we think they've kidnapped Hugo Chavez. We think they forced him to go with them. We don't know where he is. So how did that information get from the soldiers guarding the palace trying to retake control of it to all of those people in all of these far-flung neighborhoods, and not just in Caracas, but outside of Caracas? The people set up communication networks to relay this information to the people who put Hugo Chavez in power in the first place. So that's how these people knew the next day that their constitution had been overturned, that their president was disappeared. They set up communication networks among themselves. They didn't have resources. These were working class, poor peasant people. They lived under a kind of poverty you and I have never seen. But they were able to set up a communication network that overturned a coup that was backed by the most powerful country on the planet. That's saying something about the power of the people. And these are pictures of President Hugo Chavez when he is returned to office in Miraflores. You see him here. This picture is where he is. They have the newsreel, the audio, where he is openly praying in the mic, and he is thanking God, and he's thanking the people of Venezuela. And he pulls out of his pocket this crucifix that he says he keeps in his pocket all the time. And he kept that crucifix in his pocket, and that crucifix gave him hope and reassurance that God and the people would deliver him. That's saying something, y'all. That's saying something. These are some of the signs and banners that were taken by the people to the protests in front of Miraflores. This is my favorite. Yankees, game over. You lost. They knew enough English to write that one. That is just, I think, a perfect encapsulation of what people's power is in the rest of the world. People in the rest of the world understand who their enemy is. When this coup happened, these people didn't really need to be deeply educated on, what imperialism is, and who is behind imperialism. They knew that their enemy was the United States, because the oligarchy in Venezuela had close ties to the United States, and they had been constantly educated by Chavez about how the neoliberal policies that this oligarchy backed by the US kept them poor. So the political education of the people in Venezuela was an ongoing process for years. It had been carried on by Hugo Chavez and the forces that carried out the armed coup against the former neoliberal government that was unsuccessful. The people looked at Hugo Chavez as a hero after that coup attempt because of the way they educated the people about why they were poor, why these few rich people in Venezuela could have all this wealth and all this money, why they weren't sharing this wealth with you, the people who work the oil fields, who work the agricultural fields, and the wealth that these people make from your work. You don't see it. And they're doing this to do the bidding of the United States. We're talking a decade of political education of a people that Hugo Chavez and his forces engaged the people in. Political education that went on whether an outward demonstration like an armed rebellion, like an armed coup, was successful or not. Political education that was engaged in and carried on when he was in prison. Political education that continued when he was voted into office as president, and engaged the people and the military on why they needed to have a stake in their own government and why they needed to all come together and rewrite the people's constitution. So political education is not something that you do when you want the revolution to happen. Political education is something that you do constantly. Constant political education has to be done constantly. Kwame Ture taught us that. This is the overturning of the coup in Venezuela is just one example that he was right. This doesn't happen because people all of a sudden find out about imperialism a week before. No. This kind of thing happens with these people understanding that these people are their problems, these people on the left understanding that these people in the middle are their problem. That happens because people have had years, decades of education on who their enemy is and who is making their life miserable in their country. Is that the last of my, I think that's the last of my slides. Yes, that's it. No, it's not. So this is the eternal flame that sits on the outside of Quartel 4F of the fort. And this is the eternal flame that is dedicated to Commander President Hugo Chavez, the eternal commander, the eternal president of Venezuela. It overlooks an amazing view of Caracas and the countryside and the mountains, as you can see in the background, rising up over Caracas. It's an absolutely stunning, beautiful view. and it was a fantastic, fantastic um, museum and trip. And I thought it was very important to revisit that museum and what's in it, certainly to commemorate the 21st anniversary of the people of Venezuela overturning a US backed coup in their country. Um, but more importantly, I wanted to share that to inspire you. I really wanted to give you all hope. I really wanted you all to understand that we really don't ever have to organize with reactionaries. We are enough, y'all. We don't need to align ourselves with people who will deny anyone among us the human rights and the full and equal beneficiary, being a full and equal beneficiary of the society they deserve, of the riches and the wealth, and the redistribution of everything this society has to offer that the rich keep for themselves. We never have to organize with people who would deny anyone among us human rights in order for us to get ours. We never have to align with those people. We are enough. The power of the people, working class, poor, oppressed, Black, white, indigenous, Latinx, Chicano, Asian Pacific, AAPI, First Nations, Hawaiian natives, immigrant, queer, trans, disabled. We're enough. We are the people. And history has shown us that we are enough. We do not ever need to organize with the right wing, because the right wing will always, always give us up for the spoils that the US state will dangle in front of them to sell us out every single time. So thank you all very, very much. I appreciate you a great deal. And somebody asked me, I did see that comment in the chat. Somebody asked what the name of the documentary is that was being filmed in Venezuela. And let me find it. It is called The Revolution Will Not Be Televised, I believe. And like everything else, I thought I had it. But I think it's somewhere else. I don't know what I did with it. Yes, here it is. This is, let me not, there we go. Here is a link. It is on YouTube, and I'm dropping the YouTube link to the documentary in the chat for you. The documentary is called The Revolution Will Not Be Televised. And now you have a link to it yourself right there in the chat. Please enjoy it. Thank you so much for joining me tonight on this episode of People's Power Hour in Lukman Nation. Let me see what y'all had to say before I leave. Have a little wine. Damn straight it will. That's exactly what the revolution is gonna be. Let's see. I'm going up. This is great. Thank you, Bobby Ologon. Nelson Mandela said, "You don't have to be educated to know you want to be free." It's worth noting that one of the things that Hugo Chavez did when he was elected president, is one of the things that every revolutionary leader has done when they seized power. They educated the people. He educated the people. The literacy rate among poor Afro Venezuelans, indigenous Venezuelans, among the campesinos, among the peasant class, the literacy rate was just abysmal. He embarked on a campaign to educate the poor in Venezuela. But they knew they wanted to be free before they received formal education, as is true of all poor people who are oppressed. They may not be able to recite the words imperialism, capitalism, and militarism that we do, but they know they're oppressed and they don't want to be anymore. They want to be free. They know that much. So that's, thank you, Bobby Olagon, for pointing that out. Mm, let's see. What else have y'all had to say? Thank you, Quaker anarchist. I try. I learned from one of the best, my Uncle Junie, who can, man, that dude can tell a story. And Baba Lukman, who is very good at telling his own stories, very, very, very good at telling his own stories. And storytelling is a lot of fun, because it's a good way, weaving his history in with personal anecdotes and some jokes and stuff like that. It's a good way. It's a really good way to provide political education that's not just reading all the time. And it's so, I love to tell a good story and slide in some education in there. Yes, the trip was a mix of some touristy things. It was, because it was my first time to Venezuela. I got to tell you, the hotel they had us in was just, whew, I could have lived in that joint. Spoiled and pampered, y'all. Karina Acrea Paez says when Chavez won Venezuela, he crushed the two major parties combined to 10% of the vote. Mm-hmm. And Nicolas Maduro was actually one of the leading voices calling for the return of Hugo Chavez. So Nicolas Maduro didn't like just come out of nowhere. He was active in that people's revolution to overturn that coup. Bus driver from Venezuela, a bus driver from Caracas, rather. Mm. This is history keeps proving us that they can't. This is absolutely true. Chavez and Gaddafi had plans for de-dollarization. This plan of global South countries to move their economies away from the dominance of the US dollar, people have been trying to do that for decades, because they understand that that is how the United States controls their economies, forcing them to do business with the US and other countries in US dollars instead of in their local currencies. That is why this move toward multipolarization in regard to economic markets, that's why this move is so important. And the US government and the imperialist state and the powers in this piece are so frustrated, throwing everything at the wall, trying to start a war with everybody to stop this. But this has been in the works for literally decades. And it's gained so much momentum now that it really cannot be stopped. So, what we're seeing in the United States from the US empire really are like the death throes of the empire as it's losing its grip on control over countries in the rest of the world. Let's see, what else y'all have to say? Um, okay. Yeah. There's always one or two, man. There's always one or two. Oh my gosh. And I hope I misunderstood that. I don't want to miss some of your really really good comments. I think I did misunderstand your comment, Camilla, and I apologize. Okay, I apologize. I see your previous comments. I'm sorry. I apologize. Let's see. What else y'all got? What else y'all got to say all the way at the top? Let's see. Hmm. Cool. All right, y'all. I think that pretty much wraps it up for this evening. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Carrie. Sorry, I completely misunderstood your comment. I appreciate you. I appreciate all of you so much. Thanks for letting me vent. I don't do it a lot, but this time, yeah, it was necessary. And catch us next time. Hey, I think next week is Third Friday. So next week is another episode of Blackonomically Speaking with our friend and resident economics resident economist. I've talked too much. Dr. Linwood Tauheed. So stay tuned next Friday at 6 o'clock p.m. for another episode of Blackonomically Speaking. Thanks so much for y'all for joining me tonight, for hanging in. Enjoy your weekend. And as always, a luta continua. The struggle continues. But if you keep fighting, I promise you, history promises you Victoria Acerta. Victory is certain. Peace.